So many lawmakers have already seen this memo. My next guest is one of only a handful of members of Congress who have also seen the source documents and FISA applications. Joining me now is Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe. You have an amazing background. You understand all of these issues because you used to work in prosecuting these types of cases. So one of the things that we have heard calls for is not just the release of the Nunes memo, but the Democrats also have a memo, and then there's a question about the originating documents. Having worked at the Justice Department and at the White House, I have never seen anything like this where we would actually release all of this stuff in the open. But would you be for releasing all of it and letting the public decide?
Absolutely not, Dana. There are two different memos, a Republican memo, a Democrat memo. I can tell you that I think if Christopher Wray was asked if he had one of them had to be released, it would be the Republican memo. I've viewed both of them as well as the source documents. Look, classified information, we have to be very careful with it. And, you know, some of the comments that John Roberts was making, I share the director's concerns. We have to be very careful with this. I think he is concerned, as am I, that at the end of the day, we don't destroy important, vital, critical national security, law enforcement, and counterintelligence tools in the process of examining and identifying potential abuses.
Earlier this week, Speaker Ryan was on the floor and he was explaining his position on this. And there have been reports that the White House has tried to push back on, but reports that the president believes that the memo will help him in the public perception that maybe there's bias against him when it comes to the Mueller investigation. But Speaker Paul Ryan is trying to make it clear that these two things are separate. Listen.
There are legitimate questions about whether an American's civil liberties were violated by the FISA process. We are the legislative branch of government. It is our job to conduct oversight on behalf of the American people of the executive branch. This is a completely separate matter from Bob Mueller's investigation, and his investigation should be allowed to take its course.
So your job is not the messaging on this, but I want you to help me understand, how are people to separate these two issues when it's obviously being conflated in almost every story that you read?
It is being conflated, and that's one of the concerns I think that the director of the FBI has moving forward, is that people lumping all these things together. Put it in perspective, Dana, last week or the week before, I voted to renew Section 702 of FISA. Knowing what I know now, having the concerns that I have and have expressed, I'd vote for it again, and I'd vote to renew FISA as a law generally, and will continue to do that because it's important. People are conflating these issues, and it is going to be important that we understand what we're talking about in the event that the president does declassify the HPSCI memo in the morning, that folks that are talking about this are careful that they're talking about something that they really understand.
Yeah, and you're here to help us understand. So what you all voted on last week was the reauthorization of the program that allows the government to seek a warrant if there's a suspected terrorist overseas talking to somebody here in the United States. The concern, as I understand it, as laid out in the Nunes memo, doesn't have to do with that title of the FISA law. It has to do with Title I of the FISA law. What is the key difference there?
Well, we have, under FISA, there is both warrantless surveillance of foreign adversaries overseas. There is also a process to acquire a warrant here in the United States for surveillance, and that's a process that includes going before a FISA court, just as you would any other court, and making representations to a judge about the ability and the verification for having a warrant to surveil.
Where, and I understand, and if this memo gets released, maybe that's what people will be able to understand. I do want to ask you one other thing before I let you go, and that is Congressman Trey Gowdy is a good friend of yours. He's somebody that our viewers know well. He has decided to retire from Congress. I'm sure you are sad to see him go.
I am sad to see him go. I'm happy for him, and look, I should probably apologize to all my colleagues out there. I have spent a good bit of time trying to talk him out of that decision. But in my defense, not many people win arguments against Trey Gowdy.
That's true. Well, he will be retiring at the end of this year, although that seat probably remains in Republican hands. Congressman Ratcliffe, thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. Thanks, Dana.